Kathy Johnson, and welcome to Town Talk. I have with me today as my guest an author who grew up in Oxford. I've known Josh Dobbin since he was in kindergarten, and it is such a thrill and a pleasure for me to welcome Josh today to talk about his book, Of Love and Snack Cakes.
Two things I think everybody needs more of.
Love and snack cakes.
Yes, most definitely.
Are you full of love or are you full of snack cakes?
At the moment, well, both, but too many snack cakes at the moment. It's actually funny, the title is from a story in the book, and initially what I had wanted to do was it was going to be a collection of short works, but a voluminous collection of short works, right? A bunch of brief little things, but in the aggregate, it was going to be a massive tome. And I played around with different titles, this and that, and you know, sort of Too Clever by Half. The original title was going to be Briefly at Length, which I thought, you know...
Briefly at length?
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of a literary aspirant, but then, you know, I looked at, you know, that's kind of pretentious and douchey, and why don't I just take the funniest title of one of the things, and I think it's kind of intriguing. You want to know more when you hear that. Like, I love love, I love snack cakes, I want to read this book. That was my theory.
Well,
it is as you know.
Yeah, excuse me. No, speaking about and reading it, I truly enjoyed reading it. I judge a book as someone who is a reader as to whether it holds my attention, is entertaining, and a page turner, and it was all three. So I want to say that. But what else would you like to tell us about this book?
Well, the reason sort of for its existence in book form, right, in tangible page form with heft that you could put into a bookshelf and sit among other books is kind of a cool story. It was all digital at one point. It was all stuff that I had written on the internet, things that I had done for internet magazines, things that I had written. It's not just here's a transcript of my blog, as a lot of kind of do-it-yourself books I think are, or at least I hope it doesn't come across as that. But even if it were that, so what? I think there's something to be said for creating an archived thing in this kind of digital world. But what had happened was most of the stuff was up on my website. I had this, you know, name, my name, joshdobbin.com. And I figured, well, it's safe there because it's the internet, it's backed up, it's the cloud and all that. And one day, my website wasn't there. And I figured, okay, server error. I'll contact my service provider. They'll put it back up. The whole sector with the backups had been deleted and destroyed as well.
Oh no!
Yeah, and so I said, well, you must have something. It's just going to take time to recover. And time passed. Emails were exchanged, and no, a lot of this stuff that I had written and sort of gotten out of myself and said, well, here it is. It's available for everybody to look at. And I left it at that. I realized it's a lot more fragile than we like to think about it. You know, they always say with kids, watch out when you put something on the internet, it lives there forever. And I came to find out that's actually not true. You know, I don't know if this book will live forever, but I think, you know, books as a thing in this era of Kindle and digital downloads and e-books, you know, we, at our peril, I think, dismiss the time-proven technology of the paper book as a thing that, you know, is at least a shot at immortality.
Right. And something is tangible. You can touch it, feel it, look at it, and sometimes just holding it in your hand, you're there with the author. You know, there's a lot to be said for either way.
Sure.
On that remark, is there anything in the book that a thread of a theme that goes through this book?
You know, because it is a collection of short works, and because I had things that I, in essence, had an editing process of deciding, you know, what to compile. When I put it together, it's kind of like assembling a mixtape. For those of you who are very old, like myself, and remember assembling mixtapes, and not just hitting shuffle. But it's not as if it was all written as a cohesive work, right? It's a bunch of asynchronous writings, this from a couple years ago, this from very recently, But when you put it all together and look at it as a whole, what I found were that themes emerged, things that I wasn't quite aware of that I realized, oh, I write about this. And this sort of speaks to me. And what I found actually in rereading and editing it myself was that what emerged was kind of a scattershot, if not a memoir, at least a kind of a series of snapshots to act as a biography or maybe like a character sketch, kind of. I think if you read, if someone were to read the book, they would probably know me better than a lot of the people I've sat next to in offices.
You know, I would agree with you on that because much of it goes back and forth from a child's eyes, from you as a child, and then some things that come through that you say as an author that tie in with a message, a philosophical message to some point.
Right, and the theme that I saw emerging was the notion of magic. Not magic like hocus pocus, here's a rabbit out of a hat kind of magic, and not expressly the Oprah Winfrey, the secret, wish it and it will come true kind of magic, because you know I've not so much a dim view of that, but I think there are problems and issues with that kind of thing because it tries to monetize or I don't know what the word would be. Yeah, it tries to sell this notion of magic, that secret kind of stuff, you know, manifest your thing. But it speaks to a very real thing that I find happens in the world. You know, the universe kind of meets you halfway sometimes, right? And the magic the magic that I'm talking about is, you know, when you have an idea through will and intention and action, you know, you create something, and then the universe interacts with it and takes it from there, right? One of the things, the title story there of Love and Snack Cakes, it's a story about me, true story as I remember it, when I moved out of Oxford and went to Southbury for, it turned out it was less than a school year. But at the time, I wasn't aware, you know, how long we were going to be there or not. I figured these are my new digs. And I was away from my friends and in a new environment, and the kids weren't as immediately accepting as had been the case in Oxford. And I gained a bunch of weight. And the story is about how I had this crush on this little girl.
Yes.
And you know, take it for what it is. It's a third grade crush, and stuff happened to where it was relatively tragic, right? To third grade, what is that, 8-9-year-old Josh Dobbin?
Through the young Josh Dobbin's eyes, that
right,
was a big tragedy in his life, yes.
But I think, you know, we've all been there. And problems are kind of like a gas. They'll expand to fill their container. Right. You know, so if you look at it to a certain extent, that's a tank full of problems for that 9-year-old boy. So in any case, I wrote this story, and I hope I wrote it in a way that's compelling and that, you know, people can identify with.
That story was great fun to read.
What?
Great fun to read with a surprise in it.
Well, that's the thing, and that's where the brand of magic that I'm talking about occurred. I wrote this story. It's about this girl, and put it out there on the internet. And through a really bizarre, serendipitous series of events, you know, the story
was amazing.
But the story, when as written, had one ending. Well, as it turns out, because I made something, because I wrote it down, I put it down, and so other people could pick it up, it got back to this girl. Somehow, and I get this message out of nowhere. She's read it, you know, and in a weird ripple. As an adult.
Yes.
Yeah, as we are now both adults. In a weird kind of way, it sent a ripple through time and changed the fundamental arc of the story. You know, that conversations backwards and forwards through time, that kind of fascinates me.
Right. Well, you know, there are different Zen and Buddhist and all that faiths that feel that we are all in a net connected somewhere. The whole universe, all of us are connected in some way. We don't know, but it can come around. And I found that I absolutely, not to give away the entire book, but we have to. I just
The twist M. Night Shyamalan ending of that
yeah.
that particular story.
Well, but what I would like
I was dead the entire time.
Do you know what I actually loved was I think it was in that story where you got upset during a kickball game and I would love for you to tell that part where the girl sees you.
Well, there you go.
Can you give that away a little bit?
Sure.
Because it gives you an essence. I want the audience to get just a little flavor of how all these stories are. They're just not typical. You might say that the author writes about things that happen. If you saw it on paper, oh yeah, little things that happen in kindergarten. This, but when he puts it on paper in the way he does it, it's thrilling. So go ahead, Josh. Give us a little taste of that story.
Sure. Well, what it was I had formulated a plot. I was excluded there by the little third grade coterie of meanies, and I had actually had a Cub Scout meeting at my place in Southbury with my old Oxford friends. Mm-hmm. And when they came, it suddenly dawned on me, hey, look, my friends still like me. I'm having fun here with a group of people as opposed to the sort of solitary existence
Yeah,
that I
that's
had.
Oxford. We're a friendly
Yeah.
town. Okay.
Well, sometimes. I was also the town Jew of Oxford and
Yes.
gave and took my share of black eyes for it, which is chronicled in the book as well.
Yes.
But in any case, I had friends in Oxford, and I didn't have any friends in Southbury. And a sure route to friendship, at least in the early 80s, if you were a kid, was mastery of the game kickball. Kickball is around for, it's funny, kids don't play kickball anymore. It's not a thing on the recesses, at least of my daughter's schools. But it's the round, bouncy playground ball, and it's basically baseball with your foot. And you have to be kind of a spaz to not be able to play kickball at least passingly well. I said, this is it. Kickball is going to be my in. I'm an awesome kickball player in Oxford. It's just nerves that are keeping me down. I'm going to swallow it. I'm going to be the kickball hero of Southbury. And even if I get picked last, doesn't matter. I formulated this plan. It was a real thing in my head. The gears were turning and spinning, and I had assigned a lot of mental oomph to this. Yeah. And didn't work out so well. In that kind of sitcom convention where the pop fly comes up and the little underdog is going to catch it and make it.
You're feeling good.
It's happening. The story, capital S, is being written. And I could feel it as it happened, and I'm going to be the hero, and I'm going to have friends, and it bounced off my chest and rolled on the thing. And I went chasing after it, and I felt the plot and plan just falling to pieces. And the team captain, who just never particularly liked me, called out, "You suck!" In the manner that third grade boys are wont to do. And I broke. I just
snapped.
All of
snapped.
It was a thundercloud of pain and hate, and it was all that third grade suffering, all that compressed gas being suddenly released, and I took this boy to combat school. I just, like with the dark power of hatred, I body checked him with all my ample snack cake eating frame and knocked him clear down. And when we got up, when I was a kid as well in Oxford, my dad used to take me to Waterbury actually to train Tang Soo Do, martial art. And now everybody brings their kids, I think, or now it's a thing now. At the time in the early 80s, it wasn't so much a thing to have kids classes, and I actually wasn't even in the kids classes. My dad brought me to the adult classes. He was friends with the instructor. They'd known each other from the Korean War, and he was one of the actual people, along with Chuck Norris, the instructor, not my dad, who brought the martial arts back. And
was he Korean himself?
No. His name is Robert Bodwin, so I assume that's, I don't know.
Okay, I'm just asking.
But he, like Chuck Norris, one of the people that went there, sort of fell in love with the culture and the people and the martial discipline and brought it back. And Mr. Bodwin, I believe, was in a few Chuck Norris movies as an extra. He's like bad guy number 3 in Good Guys Wear Black, so I assume he was not wearing black.
All right.
Um,
Good guy.
But in any case, I had trained in martial arts at that point, and it's not as if I was some sort of battle-honed warrior, but here I was a kid who knew how to throw a punch and knew how to take a punch. And even though I was a chubby kid, at that point, being alone in Southbury, I'd kind of
Plumped up, huh?
I sought solace in the cupboard.
Yes, Alice in the Cupboard.
Yeah,
That might be another book.
the comforting arms of little Debbie wrapped me in their chubby embrace, and I didn't look like I could fight, but I could still throw a kick to your head at that point.
Sure.
And this kid was a tough kickball captain, but he never really threw a punch, and so it wasn't really that big of a contest. But I didn't want to fight. My whole plot and plan was trying to make them love me. I was going to be the kickball guy. I was going to make
fall apart.
I was going to make double plays. I was going to be yeah, exactly. What's the Robbie Burns line? To the little mouse.
Probably before my time or after my time.
How best laid plans of mice and men.
Mice and men.
Oftentimes
That's right.
gang of Glay, and my plan ganged the frig af Glay.
So you get
So
up
here I
to
am
him.
fighting this kid, and he gets up. And I'm crying. I'm weeping openly.
But you're winning.
I'm winning.
Yes.
And the fight circle happens, and we live.
Oh yeah, the boys gather round.
Boys gather around, and this is another thing that I think the reason why I wanted to put all these stories down. I realize now, I make jokes about being old and decrepit, and venerable age of 41 at this point, but it's a different era. There were school fights. They were things that happened.
Right.
It wasn't every day,
But it happened.
but it was any given day. There might be, and it wasn't unless somebody lost a tooth or broke their glasses. It wasn't anything that normally made its way back home.
It was fun and games till someone broke their. Right.
It was fun and games until somebody lost an eye,
So
and that means that up until such a time as there is eye loss, fun and games.
So now you're winning this fight.
I'm beating the hell out of this kid, and but I don't want to be. I want to be my friend, so I'm trying to make him stop. Like, stop. And he takes my protestations to stop as fear that I don't want to fight him, and also there's this crazy chubby crying kid who nobody wants to pick, who's now beating him up, making him look bad, so he's getting furious. But I'm schooled enough to be able to handle it all.
Yeah.
Exactly. And my entire world had broken apart at that point. The whole plan was to try to fit in at this day.
But then what?
Well, then
I
spot out of the corner of my eye this girl that I had crafted this crush on to kind of save myself from the daily beatdown of exclusion.
It was like your little fantasy world.
It was an oasis. It was a mental oasis. You're I don't know. I said 3 words to this poor little girl who is the center of this story. But the way of the 3rd grade crush is that it is a crush. It's a heavy weight that presses down on you, takes your breath away.
You spot her.
Well, those were my 2 coping strategies, right? Number 1, eat many snack cakes. Fill the void with cake. But number 2, craft a fantasy life in my head that I could live in that was better than the life that was going on, in school. And part of that was this little girl. You sit there, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. The idea of that unrequited, somewhere in the gut, somewhere in the heart,
right,
cloud-like feeling of just wanting this person to know how you're twisted all around your spine, and I would just, try to beam mental messages. You're the prettiest girl in the world, in my head, like somehow it's going to get into her. But this was my day-to-day, right? If she was absent, it was like, oh, why did I even bother coming to school?
Right.
And I understood it was a fiction, and in my head too, like somehow, it was a hazy on this, but somehow, maybe she loved me too. But couldn't say anything, and we're separated by. You come up with, nutty things on the bus drive back and forth. But I understood these were all fictions, but they were necessary fictions to create a little life raft to live on, right? So there's the fight, and out of the corner of my eye, I see she is running from the girl recess into the boy-dominated world of kickball.
So here she's running toward you.
What's going on? She's running towards me. She's looking right at me, and running.
I can see it on film. Josh.
Precisely that. I remember, in my head at that time, and when we look at kids, we don't think that dramas are unfolding in their day. We just dismiss them as little kids, but to them,
So here
it's
it
very,
comes.
very real. She's running into this, and my mind's scrambling. And meanwhile, I'm blocking this punch and knocking him down. She's coming in to stop it all. It's going to be like these movies that you see. She's going to say, "Hey, leave him alone. Come with me. We're going to be together."
Josh.
She's going to applaud my bravery and my outside crescent kick that I just delivered to this poor kid's head. And she runs in and she yells, "Leave him alone," and it's wonderful, and life is like a movie, and it's happening. And it wasn't kickball, it was this fight that was going to unlock the secret majesty that's going to make me the hero. And she's, "Leave him alone, you fatso," and kicks me in the shin.
When I read that, I went hysterical.
True story.
There shattered your world.
There,
A kick in the shin.
A kick in the shin and a shattering to the mirror.
So you weren't the hero.
In my personal narrative, I was, but
not to this girl.
But I was the hero defeated. No, she liked this little boy, and now this was the instance where they were going to like. She didn't just like him. Apparently, she liked him in the manner of the third grade like.
Yeah.
And so there's where that story ended, right?
Well,
but there's where that story ended. But for the magic that I'm talking about, that I think kind of permeates a lot of the other things, is that I wrote this, and hopefully I wrote it passingly well, that it was an entertaining story. And I ended it on a note, that created a beginning and a middle and an end to the story as presented. But then I put it out there in the world, first on the internet and on just some site, I figured my friends would see, or I wanted to get it out of me. I had told it enough times in conversations like this that I said, let me write it down so I don't have to keep on telling it. But when I put it out there into the world, accessible by way of the internet, and then who knows who could see it, it performed this act of magic, and this woman who was once the little girl saw it and read it, and her perception of the universe changed. Suddenly she could see from a different thing, and isn't that what magic is all about?
That is.
And that became the new ending of this,
And see, I wanted you to tell our audience this story so that they could get a flavor of what goes on in this book. Another part of this book, and most of this book, and maybe the whole interest of this book, is where your father fits into these stories. I knew your father. My husband and I, we knew your father. We knew all of you as children, our two sons and all. When we first met your father, we understood, and your mother, these were special people, very special people. Your father was, none of us are like anyone else. But your father, to me, was bigger than life, and someone that you could play a really good chess game with that would make you use your mind better. That's how I felt about him.
That was my pops.
That was your father. Now, I would like you to segue into anything you want about your father, because I think it's wonderful the way you've written this.
Well, therein also lies the... where this title, and choosing the title of that story to act as title of the book, I realized, what, it's more fitting, because, a lot of what goes on in the progression of it is the idea of love and the idea of loss. I lost my dad in 2009, and a lot of these stories, and a lot of these, short pieces were written in the aftermath of losing my dad. And as you say, from your perspective, he presented as a larger-than-life figure.
He was.
He was, to the world, a larger-than-life figure. Within the confines of my house and growing up, where he was just a fact of life, I assumed simply that life existed at that size, right? Yes. And like so many people who are unlike so many people who people say they are larger than life, they're a big character. Oftentimes, home, they're not that kind of person, or they have feet of clay. It wasn't like that in my house. My foibles, certainly he had them, but my dad was a singular person in that he always tried to figure out what the right thing to do would be, questioned whether or not he was doing the right thing, and then when he figured out what it is, try to do it. Mm-hmm. And that sounds simple enough, right? Everybody would like to think that that describes them as well. But if that were the case, there would be a lot more heroic people in the world, right?
That's very true.
Viewing my dad's life now, being able to view it with a beginning and a middle and an end, I can actually honestly say, hey, that was a heroic guy. That was a guy who, that's the reason why I think people who knew him saw him as larger than life, because he took life's challenge and said, okay, I'm going to live the crap out of this thing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to rise to the occasion, because, another reason why I assembled this book, not to be too morbid about it, but in the aftermath of my dad's death, you pick up pieces. You try to... I lived 36 years in a world with Joel Dobbin in it, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly, I was in a world that was no longer the case. This fundamental bedrock reality of course, your dad exists. Of course, your parents...
How old were you, Josh, when he passed?
36.
Yeah, that's young.
It's weird. It's transitional, because it's young to a degree, but there are certainly people who lose their fathers much younger. It's young, and it's old enough to be grown, but it's not old enough to be stoically accepting.
Right.
My daughter was turning 4. My youngest was 1. Mm-hmm. He had the opportunity to be a grandfather for that short period of time, and in that short period of time, showed that, this is going to be the best grandfather in the world.
Oh, to have him for a grandfather must have been playtime forever.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you about is, we don't want to give away all the wonderful things about your father, because they're all through this book. I think people who even knew him casually would be absolutely amazed at some of his accomplishments and how actually brilliant a man he was.
Well, I was driven to school on many occasions in a 1974 yellow Chevy Vega that he won on Jeopardy back before the Alex Trebek days, and I believe it was Art Horn was was the host. But this is my dad. So he won. It was nighttime Jeopardy that he won on that they awarded cars. So they used to award cars in addition to cash prizes like they do today. And I believe the highest cash value on the board at that point was $100. It started at like 5 or 10. Mm-hmm. So, here's this towering intellect that, and back then Jeopardy, people think of Jeopardy as a hard quiz show today, and it's not easy. But it was harder then. It was really a sort of freak show of like, look at these weirdos who know this completely esoteric stuff.
Right.
And he was, the best of the best, at least for those couple of days to win that car. So here's my dad driving this car. Meanwhile, he's also the guy who puts the bumper sticker, "Save gas, fart in a jar," on this car. And I apologize if I'm
that's
violating the...
no, we can bleep it out.
There was another bumper sticker right there with an angry picture of Khomeini that read simply, "Ayatollah Asahola."
Well,
I remember thinking, you can't drive me to school in this.
But he did.
But he was towering intellect. He wore a bunch of different hats in his life.
Tell us where he graduated from.
He went to Cornell.
Uh-huh.
The ag school, Cornell, same as Keith Oberon, I believe.
Right.
But he got out of Korea. He went into Korea at the tail end of the conflict, but still, people were shooting. And when he was 19, came back and was going to be a vet, but then not a veteran, an actual veterinarian. Mm-hmm. But life kind of zigged and zagged, and he decided he should be this success at business by other family members, that you don't want to be a vet veterinarian. That's too humble of a thing, but he always loved animals. He had an unsuccessful first marriage, and then after that broke up, a couple years later, he met my mom, and he sees this advertisement in the New York Times.
I love this
Zookeeper
story.
wanted. And that was his absolute dream ever since he was a boy.
Because he studied, what was it?
Herpetology. Well,
About bugs and
he
things?
no, he studied entomology. I believe his degree was in entomology, but just out of a sense of love of the field, he knew a lot about herpetology.
Can you define herpetology for some?
It's the study of reptiles.
Reptiles, okay.
And so he sees this position, zookeeper wanted. The pay wasn't very, very good. And apparently, if I'm getting this story correctly, reptile keeper at a major zoo and steeplejack are the two professions for which, or at least at the time, you cannot obtain life insurance because you are dealing with the most venomous animals on the planet, and he wanted to do this like nobody's business.
That's what he wanted.
That's what he wanted to do, and so he went and in the same manner that you met him, fell in love with him, and understood this is a special guy. So too did his boss, this guy Pete Brasitis, realize we need this guy.
Right.
He's a guy from Wall Street who wants to handle,
Dangerous creatures.
king cobras.
Yeah.
There were some. Were they the taipans? I forget. That's another thing too. In assembling the book, writing about my dad, there's so many instances in which I have a thought. I'm like, oh, I got to call him. And, he'll know this.
Right.
And
that's the hard part.
It's a hard part, I think, shared by everybody who
Yes.
loses somebody that they
Yes.
really care about.
Yes.
That it's like membership in a really crappy club. When you lose somebody like that is a function of your life, as a bedrock, that people just don't quite understand. And I'm hopeful too, because a lot of the book is about, remembering him and about, what it was like losing him.
Right.
How he managed to go out like a hero.
I loved what you said in his obit. He went out like a storybook king, and he did.
He really did.
He did. I was with him in some of his last moments, and he did. But I want you to tell about how famous he was in New York.
Oh, well, yeah.
And the Beatles. Tell
Oh,
about that.
that's a good story,
Because
Kathy.
we're not going to
That's a
give
good
away
story.
the whole book, but
That's actually not contained within the book, so that's a good thing to talk about.
that is. But you did touch upon the advertising.
Yeah, well, he got his job through the New York Times. Well, at the time, there was a Subway advertising campaign, pretty famous Subway advertising
We heard
campaign.
it. I remember my time. We heard it all over TV.
I got my job through the New York Times,
It
right?
was a big
Now everything's Craigslist and
Yeah,
LinkedIn
but
and
then it
the
was-
internet, and there is no classified section
Right.
to speak of that really.
And then it would say what the person was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are these series of true to life, jobs and positions where they would have a photographer come, and I got my job through the New York Times, and it would be whatever, circus ringmaster or what
Right.
have you. Well, there's nothing quite as visually compelling as a guy surrounded by deadly reptiles. And my dad was
his
a
curator suit, which is a one piece, right?
yeah, and so they sent out the photographer, and my dad was a movie star handsome kind of guy, and there's this really just amazing picture of him that for a time was the most popular of the
Series?
of the series of I Got My Job through the New York Times, such that the Subway posters that ran, big, what are they like? I don't know,
Huge.
6x9,
Yeah.
maybe that looms larger, maybe they're smaller, but
No,
I was
they
a
were
little boy
big.
when I saw them,
They
but
were
they were big, and they papered all throughout the subway, and you could become sort of, in the moment famous. Meanwhile, he's not particularly well paid of a man who can't get life insurance, but walking out of the subway, is like, hey, look, there's the guy, right?
Right. Now, what was portrayed in this picture?
Well,
I love
he's holding.
a huge snake.
I think it's a reticulated python. I'm not sure. There's like a Gila monster in the frame.
Crawling
there's
up his
there's
arm.
some kind of monitor lizard of
I mean, he had all these reptiles all over him
Yep, and it just
in a very masculine pose.
yeah.
A
Well,
very.
and it's funny too. So many people who grow up with a dad like that, you would think like, well, it's hard to step out of his shadow, but that was never the case either. You know, it was always an invitation to live life at that size, not, you know,
Yes.
get behind me, son, and watch how it's done. But in any case, so here's this poster, and one day he's like, you know, he had prints. We have proofs and all those sort of things.
Sure.
But he's like, I want a poster. I'm on the subway. I want a poster of myself. So he goes to a subway and starts prying one off. And the cop's like, hey, you can't do that. And the guy's like, look, my dad, no, look.
It's me.
And he stood in the little pose. So the cop helped him take the poster off.
Only your father could manage that.
And so he's like, well, what am I going to do? He hung it up at work.
At the reptile
At the
cage.
reptile house, yeah. And in the back room of the reptile house, it was always overseen by this like looming Big Brother poster of my father. And you know, it's a mix of egotism and then what have you.
Got to have a little ego to be as big as life.
Yeah, to handle those kind of, you know,
Animals.
it's sort of like being a surgeon. You know, there's a kind of the necessary arrogance I find if you are going to like look at an uncut belly and say, you know what? I'm good enough to cut into this belly,
Well, you have
fix
to
something that's wrong in it,
Yeah.
sew it back up, and have this. So too is there a kind of necessary arrogance if you're going to get the job done to say, yeah, I know I had to tie myself off for and get an IV ready just in case I get bit by this thing.
Right.
And even so, the anti-venom is only 15%, but I got to clean the snake cage, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to go home and,
the
you know,
challenge
watch it.
was.
So there's the poster.
All right. So now
There's
we're at the
poster.
Bronx Zoo. What happened?
The poster's up there. Well, one day, apparently this is a thing that happens. Famous people can kind of get the zoo or public spaces like that to themselves on off days. Mm-hmm. And ain't nobody more famous than the Beatles. So Paul McCartney had wanted to bring his family. They were in New York for some reason.
Is
the
that
70s.
when they invaded, when they came on plane? Or
No, this was in the 70s, and it might have been, you know, I'm not sure as to the timing. I don't know if his whole
But
thing
it was
with the
Paul McCartney.
Yeah, with the arrest for the pot in Japan had happened at that point or not.
Okay.
But he was with Linda, I believe. You know, he was in his bearded stage. The Beatles had broken up because it was the 70s. And Paul McCartney, I think he was in Wings, but still, it's Paul McCartney. You're meeting a Beatle,
Right.
You're not saying, "Wow, that's the lead singer of Wings." Taking nothing away from Wings, but except for that horrible Christmas song, it's really a travesty. In any case, simply anyway, but I digress. So it was found out that Paul McCartney wants to visit the zoo, and my dad, you know, goes to the higher ups and said, "Listen, if there's anybody in this zoo that you know should be seeing, I got it. Let me do it. Let me be the guy who leads the tour." So my dad, Paul McCartney, Linda, I don't know if any of the kids, I believe that one of his kids was there, spent the whole day with the McCartneys, bringing them hither and yon. And as it turns out, Linda apparently was like the nice one. Mm-hmm. You know, Paul was really, you know, nice enough, but anybody who was, my dad was sort of furniture. Like, okay, you are the...
You're the person.
Yeah, you're the person who's doing this.
Oh.
Well, it concludes, the whole tour concludes, he said, you know, let me show you the back of the reptile house. You can see the behind the scenes, you know, how this happens, you know, what it looks like in here versus out there, and then the kind of, you know, logistics that go on. Oh, that's pretty cool. Paul McCartney goes in there, and they do the whole tour, and it's winding up. My dad says, listen, I don't know how to ask this, and McCartney's like, oh, an autograph. I know the score on this. What do you want me to sign? A piece of paper or whatever. So, could you do this? I got this poster of me, right? I think it would be kind of cool if you signed Paul McCartney was here, like graffiti, right? Like it's a subway poster, like you wrote graffiti on the thing, and that's, you know, I'd have this poster. You know, what am I going to do with a little piece? And Paul McCartney's like, no, I don't do graffiti, love. I'll give you an autograph. You know, my dad's like, no, I don't think you understand. I just want to, you know, because it's this thing. I have this poster of me. It's going to be something that will exist forever. And Paul's like, no, I don't think so. And my dad's like, listen, you're going to do this. If I have to hang you from this crock pit, it's going to happen. I've just sacrificed my entire day. All I'm asking, and Linda's like, sign the friggin' poster, Paul.
His wife.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, Linda was on my dad's side. The poster was signed, and the poster
Of him with the red
yes,
tiles.
Paul McCartney was here, and the poster followed us from move to move to move.
I know, I've seen that poster.
The poster now lies in a state of disrepair.
We have to get that fixed.
That's actually, I think, something I want to do as a big project. Because
That's got to get done.
Yeah, well, you know, when my dad died, he was cremated, not buried, and there's no lasting place, right? There's no place to go.
That would be a beautiful thing.
Well, that's my thought, is that I want to, you know, get this restored to kind of museum
Right.
quality and have it as a stab at immortality.
Now, let me ask you something, Josh. I wanted to tantalize the audience, the viewing audience, to actually want to read your book. And I wanted a few of the stories to come out. Now, what I would like to ask you to do, if you don't mind, a couple of things. I'd like you to read just one or two paragraphs of the book, of the part in your choice. And then I don't know if you want to, just to get, I think the audience has a taste of what your father was like. I can only say that
This is my ugly mug right there.
yeah. I can only say that from my point of view, getting to know him, he never ceased to amaze me or surprise me with the knowledge he had of so many things. I'll just give one quick thing because I do want to talk more about your book. But I can remember in a time where I could read cancer cells at home. I'm a cytotechnologist, and in those years, you could read at home. And I was sitting at my kitchen table with my microscope, reading women's pap smears for cancer. And your father walked in and he said, "Let me see, what are you looking at?" I said, "Oh, go ahead, take a peek." And he was able to describe every cell in that smear, whether it was normal, not normal, whatever. Another issue, another little short story, we used to get together when you kids were little. You, my son Richard, Robert, we all got together, you kids played together. And what would we do? The Dobbins and Johnson adults would play Trivial Pursuit.
It was the 80s. That was a requirement. You had to play Trivial Pursuit.
Big game, Trivial Pursuit. So it would be the guys against the girls, your mother Jean and I and Wayne and your father Joe. And, you know, I thought I was pretty good at it, okay? One day, the time was waning after at least a year of playing this game together. Father looks at my husband, Wayne, and he says, "Hey, Wayne, you tired of this game? You want to win and just leave?" Wayne says, "Yeah, let's do it." Well, your father, none of us ever got to pick a card. Your father went right through all of them and swept the table, which was not surprising. But those are some of my own fond memories. But not only would I like you to just read a little bit of the story, because it reads a little bit like the Christmas story, and this is Christmas time, a little bit through the eyes of the boy who wanted the Red Ryder gun. A little bit like that. It's kind of like that, and that's what held my attention. And also, would you mind reading a little bit of the letter you found to your father, too, if you can find it in there that was hidden away?
Yeah, I could do that.
See, give it a try. The reason I do this, ladies and gentlemen, and any children that are watching, the reason I do...
What are you doing, children? Go watch YouTube.
No.
Play Minecraft.
No, that's all right. But the reason
You're watching public access. You're 9. Stop it.
Well, I doubt that they are, right? But there might be some out there. The reason I do this is I want you to get a flavor of the book in the author's own voice and a little bit of a flavor of the author's father in his own words. If you follow me, Josh, if we can accomplish that, you can do you first and your father last, or either way.
Well, you know,
and we'll have some interlude music.
Interlude music. How could I not?
Yeah.
Interlude music. Hold on one moment.
We'll find it.
Maybe we'll pause and get this in edit. Let me get the right
No, we don't have to
spot.
pause.
We're like Bill O'Reilly in that famous clip where he gets nuts and goes, "We're doing it live."
We're doing it live.
Yeah,
That's it. This is who we are.
He screams swear words during that point. I will choose not to scream swear words. However, what I will choose to do, you know what? I should look at the table of contents. That would help.
That would help, and this is your own book, Josh.
Yes, page 99. Okay.
Yeah.
In what I would like to do then, since the conversation has gone in this direction, is read something that hits the intersection of what we're talking about.
That's great.
There's a story. There's a short work called 3 Pictures of My Dad, and I wrote it after he had died for a specific reason. 36 years old, and I came to realize in that immediate aftermath, the first month or so, every picture in my head was of him of the previous year dying.
May I interrupt you, Josh?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing that we have about 10 more minutes before the show
Okay,
ends.
I can wrap it up in 10.
No, okay, and I know you can, but this is so important to your book that I want you to be able to get it in. Usually I wouldn't say that.
Sure.
You go right ahead then.
Sure. Well, the setup for this is this. So it pained me that although I had memories, there are more memories of memories, if that makes sense. Stories about stories. I could tell you, oh, this happened this time. But I didn't have the pictures in my head of what did it really look like, when he was young. What did it really feel like? Because I could just see, these last couple of months as he got, thinner and weaker and all that. So I kind of put a little mental request into my head. Please, memories, open up. I don't want to just talk about it. I want to see it again. And the next day, this flood of things happened, and I had to literally get it down on paper. We always talk about, put it down in words. And that expression, I think, holds a lot of meaning. It's not just that you put it down on a piece of paper. You literally put it down from carrying it. And so I had these 3 very distinct images of moments that kind of described who my dad was and what the relationship was. One of them when I was a very, very little boy, 3, 4 years old. Another one when we had just found out about the diagnosis and how he handled it and how, to see how...
He was diagnosed of cancer.
Lung cancer.
Lung cancer,
yeah,
yes.
right in the most terrible spot.
Right at the
branching
bronchus.
point. Yep.
In the bronchus, yes.
But there was another moment that spoke to this question of having a larger-than-life figure, but also somebody who is, good all the time. And it was when I had moved back from Southbury. So this all ties around, full circle. And towards the end of the year, I had actually lost a lot of the weight from all those snack cakes. I was back with my friends, and I didn't know if anybody was ever going to like me in that same way. You're a little kid,
Sure.
you have these little crushes, and it occurred to me that I should maybe, instead of having this big, life-altering crush on someone, maybe I should kind of formulate a crush on somebody that I think is sort of attainable.
Right.
It's just to hit that check mark. Somebody liked me. And there's this girl, her name was Michelle, who seemed like she was laughing at my jokes. We talked and everything. And I knew another kid liked her, so I'm like, oh, well, that's,
all right.
There you go.
All right.
And I decided, well, I'm going to get her to like me. But I need something extra. I need and my mom said, Joel, you keep on taking him to this 1950s barber shop where he gives the Brill cream haircut. It's the 80s. He needs a stylist, my mom said. And I put a lot of mental oomph into this idea. I need a hairstyle. Okay. And when I get the hairstyle, then,
life will be good.
Life will be good. Then I'm going to ask this girl, do you like me? And she's going to like it.
So this is where we segue into this?
Yes,
okay.
It's called Your Problems Are Big to You.
Your problems are big to you.
Yeah,
all right.
It's a subsection. It's one of these little pictures.
Okay.
So in any case, I'll skip to the point where I pick it up. Just give you I decide I'm going to tell her, but that day I hear her talking to a little friend. She likes some other little boy, this kid named Lee. And I realized hair had nothing to do with it. He had a mushroom bowl haircut, and maybe nobody's going to like me. Right. So there I am. My dad comes home, and All right, I'll just start here.
Just start.
All right,
yes.
there we go. Okay, right now I'm in our house and I'm drawing an AT-AT walker, looking at the cover of the Empire Strikes Back video game for reference at the dining room table. It's heading towards summer, so it's still very much light outside even after my dad gets home. I'm a latchkey kid, as both of my parents work. My dad on this day arrives home first. I greet him as he enters and then go back to my drawing. Hey, you want to see who gets a higher score on Night Stalker? My dad asks me, pointing to the living room where this television video game system sits on the floor of the TV, in front of the TV. Night Stalker is a game which pits a human in a maze against a series of killer robots. We play this game often together. I say, I'm going to skip a little bit. Nah, I'm doing this, I mumble. And I really am. I'm just caught up in trying to get these angles right, trying to draw this AT-AT just like on the box, and it's working out well enough, but I'm dissatisfied. I don't know it yet, but I'm going to have to learn about perspective if I ever want to do this the way I envision it coming out. You okay? He asks me. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just drawing. No, you okay? I look up, maybe even a little annoyed. What do you mean? You seem down. Is everything okay at school? I hesitate, shrug my shoulders. I guess. What? What's going on? See, I'm caught now in a moment I do not want to be in. My father has many hats that he wears. There are times he is a stern giver of laws and a doler out of punishments, and those are hats. There are times he is a court jester and a royal goof, and other times he is a trusted voice of authority on interesting subjects. And I'm okay with all of these things, each in their place, but there are other times, not all the time, but every so often, that he keys into something otherwise unnoticed and becomes a knower of hidden things. It's unpredictable when this happens, but sometimes he just knows stuff, catches a hint and follows it, and there's no getting away, and he's picked up on the fact that this is all happening. And so let me skip a little bit to the money part here.
Okay.
Because I explained about the haircut and all that. Okay, so today is the haircut's first appearance at school. All this drama at this point exists solely in my head. Today, in the lockers right outside of Mrs. Pawczek's classroom, I overhear this Michelle, she of the wholly and mercenarily manufactured crush, confide to a friend that she thought a boy named Lee was cute. And there, that plan fizzled. Lee is a pleasant little boy with a bowl haircut. He wears an oversized belt buckles. Overall, not a grand tragedy. As I pencil in the lines of the AT-AT's head, getting a detail wrong, I think that I'm just more annoyed with myself than anything else. How dumb, putting all of this into a haircut. What was I thinking? I feel silly and stupid, like when I was in kindergarten, and I thought that if only I had Zips brand sneakers, I could run faster than anyone in class. And here's my father knowing something. And all this replays in my head as he's asking me what's wrong, and there's a layer of embarrassment in the fact that there's a girl involved, and what he's picking up on is that I like a girl, and I'm annoyed that the hesitation is making it seem like more than it is, and I'm contemplating just spilling the beans entirely, but instead I say, it's no big deal, really. And a look of concern crosses my dad's face. I see it. Shakes his head and approaches, and now he's serious, but with understanding, and I'm not prepared for what he says to me. It comes as a revelation. Wait. Don't you say that. Don't. You don't have to qualify what's bugging you against other things. You're 10. If something is a problem to you, then it is. You're entitled to have your problems be big to you. You don't have to dismiss it. It's not important. And you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but don't think you have to dismiss it. It's not important. So now I see he's concerned about this, but it's all just a misunderstanding. I should just...
Oh, go ahead.
Like,
yeah.
I should just swallow it all and tell him about, swallow the weird, uncomfortable nature of talking about a girl with my parents, let him know there's nothing. Pop, it's just there's a girl, I sort of liked her, but she likes somebody else, I guess, and suddenly, I realized with shock and amazement my father really was a knower of things. Suddenly, without warning, my eyes are burning with tears, and I'm blubbering and crying, and it's a floodgate, and I'm standing there just throwing out all these details, and I can't stop crying. And he picks me up, and he holds me like when I was a little boy, and I'm crying hysterically into his shoulder, blabbering almost incoherently. She likes other kid, why can't she like me? Nobody ever likes me. What if nobody ever likes me? And I begin even to, amidst the racking sobs and heaves, accidentally let swear words out in my spelling. I'm barely even making any sense, I'm saying the F word, but I'll close it from there.
I
But,
have to ask you to, because we only have 1 minute left now. But listen,
I am nothing if not loquacious.
No, well, that's okay. That's what made my job easy today. Is
Tenacious and loquacious.
No, what I want to say to the audience today is that this is a fantastic read. It's a wonderful book, and I want Josh to tell you and put up on the screen if we can. If you want to know more about this book of love and snack cakes, where can we go to?
You want to know more about the book? Want to know more about me? Visit www.joshdobbin.com.
www.joshdobbin.com.
Yeah.
I urge everyone, please, everyone who's listened to this, or anyone in Oxford or the Valley who has known Josh, remembers Josh.
Wants to beat Josh up.
And there's more surprises in this book, and you might even see your own name in it. So
names have been changed to protect the guilty.
Yeah, I bet, Josh, I bet. So anything else? We probably have a few seconds to before they give me the countdown. Would you like to just say
a final word, like Jerry Springer?
A final word.
What's
our final word, Josh?
The final word is, I suppose, much like this show. The book is a do-it-yourself effort. I put this together myself. It's self-published, as it were. I did all the layout and all that sort of stuff. Do stuff. If you have an idea,
make it happen.
Make it happen. You have you have a show. You said, what if I had a show? And look, here you are having a show. I said, all these loose things. What if I have a book? Now I have a book. Now my daughters have something that is in my words that they could have. Not that I hope it doesn't happen soon, Kathy. But
none of us do. They have something of their father.
Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Old time is still a-flying, right? Right. This same flower that smiles today, tomorrow may be dying. So, I'm not going to be here forever, but hopefully the words will.
Now, as we go off the air, I would hope that you would let us see the crocodile tooth that landed in your father's leg when he wrestled one as a curator.
And that actually is
in the book.
That's a story that I hold very, very dear to my heart and to my chest.
So
this is the last bit of my dad that
you
exists.
You have tangible.
Yep. Right here. Oh, well, there's my book in there. But in any case,
he's got it around his neck.
No.
Well, let's see what Wayne can do. But he's wearing it today, folks, and it's beautiful. Crocodile tooth.
Right. Hold on.
There we go. There we go. You got it.
There's.
No, let it hang on your chest. Yeah.
There we go.
There.
Okay.
There it is.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
There we go.
The crocodile tooth.
There it is.
But it was so much fun. We're gonna.
Time flew.
Time flew when you're having fun. You're just like your father, Josh. You're a very interesting person. We're gonna start wrapping it up. How many seconds do I have before I wrap up? 0. All right.
We're done.
Josh, I'd like to say thank you for coming. Please
course.
read Josh's book. I think you're all going to enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.